Okay, so the first assessment is based on responding to legal and ethical breaches. So this event requires you to submit a report that demonstrates your ability to develop a strategic response in situations where legal and ethical requirements have been breached. The assessment for this event is based on the following Indigo scenarios. So when you click on that link, it will open up the scenarios. So there's 3 scenarios. So we've got scenario 1 is a stack of service user files were left on the front counter in the reception area. The top file was lying open, so all service users' information was visible to anyone passing through. During further investigation, the Indigo worker who accidentally left the file open said to their manager, "It doesn't matter, she's a crazy old lady anyway, so I don't think she'll complain." So Hayley, can you think of what breaches this service worker was actually breaching? What legal responsibilities are they not taking into consideration in their actions? Excellent. So Privacy and Confidentiality Act, exactly right. So they're really not caring about her privacy and also her confidentiality in the workplace. So we need to take that into consideration when we start looking at the report. So now, as an Indigo worker, if you go down below where it's actually asking you after the scenario, so you've got scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3. So we'll just base on scenario 1 just to start off with. Your task is, as a result of the legal breaches, you've been asked to work on a compliance project by the CEO and Board of Directors. They've asked you to respond to the legal and ethical breaches in a report using Indigo's report template. So there is a report template, which I'll show you in just a moment, to prevent them from happening again. As you prepare the report, you refer to the range of Indigo's policies and procedure and guidance documents, such as the privacy and confidentiality policy, which you've actually stated here. Also the care of duty, dignity, and risk. So risking the policy, not using the policy to continue in their work ethics. The code of ethics as well. So they're actually in scenario 1. They're calling the lady who's come in to receive the service, calling her a crazy old lady. So really she's breaching her code of ethics as well in the workplace. So let's have a look. You'll find here, step 1 is the introduction. And what we need you to do when you open up the report template, which I'm just going to open that up, just won't be a moment so I can show you exactly what it is. Okay, I can't get that up on here actually. Just won't be a moment. Okay, so when you open up the report template, the headings you'll use are your introduction, step 2, and underneath the introduction you'll go down to this part here. So when you look at, I can't highlight that, but when you can see here in the section, you'll have discuss why legal and ethical compliance is important to the organisation, including description of the following points. So you'll start to list. All we're asking for you is to put a brief comment under each. So review your learner guide, provide a brief summary of the structure of the Australian legal framework. So not too much information, because as you can see, the whole document only requires 1,000 to 1,500 words. And then you'll move into the role of industry code of ethics, the distinction between legal responsibilities and legal obligations, and responsibilities and obligations for workers and managers. So all we want to see here is a bit of an introduction of you describing and explaining each legal and ethical compliance underneath each heading there. Then you'll move into your heading number 2, would be breaches. So in this section, you will need to describe the legal provisions that apply to the organisation and or workers in the following areas. So you have privacy, so we've discussed privacy, your confidentiality and disclosure, your duty of care, work health and safety, mandatory reporting, and young people at risk. So all the information is listed in your learner guide. Accreditation and compliance, such as working with children checks and governance requirements. So if you've started work placement, we would have asked you already to provide that working with children check or criminal record check, as it is part of the policies and procedures in the workplace. Provide the sources of information you used in relation to each of the legal provisions listed in point 1, including the name of the source. So this one here is asking you to list, where did you find this information? So in point 1, we want to know, where can we find information regarding the Privacy Act? So you'll do your research, whereabouts, and you'll provide a link there to say, this is where you can go to have a look. And basically your task is to provide this information to workers and in the workplace, and your document might not provide a lot of information because, like we said before, it's just a summary. So this information, the link will provide to the other workers to be able to go to that website and review. If they want more information or if they want to have an overview there, they can. So you need to name the source where you got the information and a link to that reference. And if it's come from a book, we would like the name of the book, the author. If you're putting it there, it's more like referencing your work. Number 3, analyse how legal provisions listed in point 1 have been breached in each scenario. So back to our scenarios, we've already described how one of the service workers has breached the Privacy Act, the Confidentiality Act as well, and the Code of Ethics. So we want you now to list how. So you need to describe how. And then you've also got scenario 2 and 3. So you just put scenario 1, this is what's happened, and this is how she's breached it, because she's left it open on the desk for everybody just to come along and review that client's documents. And you don't want to leave that open. Okay, so each scenario, you just go through each one and put a little point in. Like I said, keep it brief and summarize it. Number 4, describe the ethical provisions and responsibilities that have been breached in each scenario in the following areas. So Code of Ethics, they're calling a lady a crazy old lady, and in the scenario the service worker was saying this in front of a lot of people at the front desk. So people coming in and out, doctors, nurses, so it's really, she's breaching the Code of Ethics there and her responsibilities. So herself as a worker, her co-workers, so she's actually making them feel obligated to engage in a conversation regarding a client that's come in, the other service users, the community, the organisation, the professional industry, and code of conduct, and practitioner-client boundaries. So you need to identify here, describe the ethical provisions and responsibilities that have been breached in each scenario. So you could, let's just have here, look at self as a worker, so you can put under there scenario 1, this is where it's what they've done, B, C, D, so there's quite a few. Explain which organisational policies and procedures have been breached and how in each scenario. So basically going back to our scenario page where they actually have a list of Indigo's policies and procedures listed. So I'll just go have a look at that, just won't be a second. If you open up your UAG, you'll be able to find all the information listed for the scenarios, and they'll be a little bit more easier to understand, but you will see they'll have all their organisational for Indigo policies and procedures that you'll need to follow if you're working at Indigo. So Indigo is basically TAFE's form of simulated workplace, so you just follow their workplace policies and procedures. And if you are working in the workplace or on work placement, please take a moment to look at their policies and procedures in the workplace, because it will give you a guide of what you should be doing for your role, and position description you may have been given might not be related to what you feel you should be doing, or maybe you're not doing the right, you're following the job opportunities that are available or the job description that you should be. Number 4, so the recommended actions. So think about, in this section, the recommended actions the organisation should take in relation to the legal breaches in each scenario. So if you have a look at through the workplace policy procedures, they'll actually give you a brief description of what would happen if you breached each legal or an ethical breach. Recommend how the organisation should monitor and evaluate work practices for non-compliance or ongoing basis. Explain how the organisation should ensure workers remain current and aware of emerging legal requirements and ethical issues, including keeping updated about changes, legislation and codes or practice, maintaining workers' professional development, sharing updated knowledge and information, encouraging workers to be proactive in reviewing and improving their work practice to ensure compliance. So Hayley, can you think of one way that as a worker you can make sure you're engaged and you've kept up to date with organisational changes or legal requirements that have changed? Yeah, definitely. CPD. In TAFE here, we actually have a training facility, and they'll put out, oh, we're having this, there's a course on, and you can register your interest. So it's always good. It's good to be part of, if there's a WHS meeting or if there's a team that gets together who does all the training, it's good to be making sure you're up to date and, definitely register your interest to do that. Be part of that group who are always constantly engaging in the changes. Okay. Number 5, so we need to have a look at the risk, penalties and consequences. So if you're not following workplace policies and procedures, there's going to be some penalties or risk, or what are the penalties and consequences? So it could be instant dismissal. It could be identified training where you might need more training. So with the first scenario, we can see here that lady really needs, or the service worker needs some training in making sure she maintains the client's privacy. And why? Maybe she doesn't understand. Maybe there's a bit of identified training that client or that service worker now needs on, so continuing to do that. Okay, so it's pretty much assessment event 1. Do you have any questions, Hayley? There's a lot of information here. If we cannot find information, is it fine to Google and reference this? Yes, as long as you reference it back. So if you find information, more information on the Privacy Act, definitely. And we are asking you to do that as well. So we're asking you to actually do some more research, provide the name of the source, and make sure you provide that link to the reference. So you need to reference your work if you do that as well. So there will be a lot of work, a lot of information out there on code of conduct as well. So once again, make sure you reference it back to where you found that information. Yes, it will be. Yes. So if you see at the top here, let's have a look. Your report should be between 1,000 and 1,500 words and be constructed on a Word document. So yes, it will be part of the 1,500 words. Okay, no more. Oh yeah, one more question. Oh, okay, great, thank you. All right, so assessment event 2. It's based on another scenario, and I'll just open this up. Might be a moment. So you work at Indigo and you've been asked by the CEO and Board of Directors to work on a project to address some recent legal and ethical breaches in the organisation. In one case, there was a complaint from a member of the community saw one of Indigo's workers smoking a cigarette outside the main entrance while they were talking to a service user. After investigating the complaint and breaches, the organisation saw the need for a specific policy and procedure to manage workplace smoking. So they've identified there isn't actually a workplace policy and procedure based on smoking in the workplace. So now it's up to you. Your task is, Mary Thompson, the CEO, asks you to draft, of Indigo, would like you to draft a policy and procedure about smoking in the workplace. The brief you are given is follows. So they want you to consolidate both the policy and procedure in one document using Indigo's template. So once again, use the template that's provided. So you can see here in your UAG, they've given you the link here to open up that template. Once again, use the information that's listed in your unit assessment guide. So it'll actually give you the policy and procedure. Write the policy and procedure document that is in plain English. Okay, so we'll go back to the scenario. Ensure the policy and procedure applies to Indigo workers in all job roles, including when staff work off-site. For example, if in a service user's homes or public places such as cafes and in vehicles. So remember, Indigo is a service health provider. It's like a health hub, pretty much like a GP super clinic, if you could say. And they also do home care. So they're asking you to provide this policy procedure based on also the client, the staff members are either they're at the workplace or whether they're in a service user's home or public places wearing a uniform or a cafe, driving workplace work vehicles as well. Ensure the new policy and procedure is consistent with the existing Indigo policies and procedures and documents such as, so once again they will give you a list in the scenario of all the information, so WHS policy and procedure, the code of conduct. Hayley, can you think of if they're smoking right near, so the first scenario we had, well, there is only one scenario for this event too, so just don't get too confused with assessment event 1, where it has 3 scenarios, whereas assessment event 2 only has 1. So this service provider was smoking right near the entrance. So what kind of breach? Can you think of the breach? What legal breaches are they making? Yes, that's right. So it's part of the Environmental Act. So yes, it must be beyond that 10 metre, especially from an entrance to a health hub. So we need to have a look at that when they're saying follow a logical structure. So they also want you to look at, let's go back to your scenario. Provide a summary of the actions you would take to develop and implement the policy and procedure in an action plan. So this must include how you would develop, distribute and evaluate the policy and procedure. Okay, so you need to open up the action plan template so you can see here. And we'll open that up. Open. Okay, so you have your procedure and you'll also, so it's best to go for your action plan, how you're going to implement it, what are you going to do. Once again, so make sure you use the headings that are listed in your unit assessment guide to put into the template that's listed there for you. Okay, so we'll go down. And here it is here. So you want to list and describe the actions you would take to develop the policy and procedure. You want to communicate the policy procedure to workers in the organisation. Distribute the policy procedure. So how can you get the information out there that you have implemented this policy procedure related around smoking in the workplace? How are you going to let the other staff members know, Hayley, that there is a new policy procedure in the workplace? How can you make sure everybody is aware?
Well, potentially that's a conversation that he isn't aware of. Like maybe Lindy needs to reach out to him so he understands that this is our preference. I mean, he hasn't been rude or anything. He's just.
Yeah, a team meeting, perfect. Team meeting, it could be an internal email to all staff members. There could be training, so somebody might come in like yourself, someone like yourself, which will be part of your action plan. So you'll be putting on your action plan saying, okay, well, I'm going to get, I will run the session where I'll get everybody in the same, in the room, because in the community health hub you've got quite a few members of staff, so you might run different sessions on why this has been implemented, what are the health risk if you are smoking near an entrance, identify what the breaches are so everybody's aware, so if they do actually breach your policy procedures in place, they know exactly the consequences, as we've spoken about before, the consequences of people's actions and how it affects well, the individual as well as other work members. So it's another way you could provide that in your action plan. What are you going to do? How are you going to get it out there? So I think, yes, definitely a team meeting to start off with, and you could also get the staff members to sign off to say, yes, I understand the policy procedures in place. Outline the timeframes each action will take. So it's asking you to write on your action plan, okay, the team meeting, so that should probably happen in 2 weeks. You'll have your policy and procedure ready. You could say within 14 days, or if it's quite urgent, you'd say 7 days. I want to have this done, and I want to have this part done. You might have to get some brochures on the health risk of smoking, what it can actually do to somebody that's passive smoking, what can happen if it goes into the building. So basically, you need to look at, okay, what kind of actions am I going to put into place? Identify who you'd interact with in developing communication, the policies and procedures. So who you're going to talk to. So definitely the CEO who's actually giving you the task. So you'll have a chat to the CEO, identify, okay, this is where I feel I can develop what I need to, this is the information I need to provide in this policy and procedure. You need to also identify their roles and responsibilities. So they might be responsible for also providing all the CEO board members this information, this new policy and procedure. That could be their role, and then you might actually go or to the service workers and say, okay, this is the new policy and procedure I have developed, I'm going to explain it. Whereas the CEO might go to all the business partners as well. And they also may have to put signs up, so there might not even be signs. So maybe that's why the indigo smoker worker has been smoking right near the entrance. There isn't actually signs around. So what do our signs do? So from our previous assignments, what do signs do, Hayley? Signs in the workplace, what are they there for?
Yeah, so if I just send you a generic email with just that information, then you can add your bits and your own signature and email it in, say that that's the point of discussion then, and that's something else. But what it really comes down to with these
Yeah, excellent. So yes, definitely our hand hygiene, so they're there to remind us and also to educate. So the signs are there for immediate education. So if they're sneezing, we're sitting in a waiting room, we can see that sign's up and it's saying, this is what you should do. And it actually, yes, triggers the mind to go, okay, oh, I remember what I should be doing now. Or yes, definitely with hand hygiene, it's all there as we did in the foundation workshop. Excellent. Okay, so identify the resources you'll need to develop and implement that policy and procedure. So I was saying before, you might get some brochures. You might also need to get the signs. You might need PowerPoint if you're going to do a presentation. You also have your template, your action template. So the action template's there, but also you need your policy and procedure template to be able to create the policy. Let's move down. Identify potential problems in developing, communicating, and distributing the plan and how you'll resolve these. So you might have people in the workplace who might detest the changes you're trying to implement. So you need to identify that could be a problem. You might find there's no area for signs to go up. So you need to think, okay, well, what are we going to do? How can we get that sign on the wall? You'll have to think about other actions you can do to make sure those signs are out there. Also, can you think of another potential problem developing, communicating, and distributing? What else could you think of?
with the dates you need to discuss with Lindy for our existing students, and then some proposed dates.
So with the communication, you might not be able to get hold of all staff members. That's a potential problem. And the only way to resolve this would be, if they're unable to attend a training session, to distribute a large, wide internal email. And also we'll have our signs around as well. Explain how you evaluate the policy procedure ongoing to ensure it remains compliant, including how you make changes to the policy and procedure once implemented. So normally with policies and procedures, they're updated annually and looked into, making sure they remain compliant, and also if there's a change in legal, you can actually register your email address so you can actually get updates if there's been changes to any policy procedure that you've actually used to implement your new policy, or any laws that have changed or been updated. You can register that for that information. Okay, do you have any questions on assessment event 2? No, no examples are required. It's just more the information that has been listed. So I know you're doing the podiatry course, and no, you don't need to actually refer it back to your own industry. However, it is good while you're in industry to have a look at what policies and procedures are related to your workplace. So definitely have a look, but you won't need to provide any information from any of your workplaces. No, that's fine. Great. Okay, so I'll move on to assessment event 3. It's pretty much just what you've been doing before. Short answer questions with all the error assessments, very similar. Reviewing the learner guide and answering the questions. So I'll just open the, oh, it's not opening. Okay, so that's pretty much assessment event 1 and 2, and 3. So 3 is just very much similar to what you've been doing before. Make sure you're answering the questions very clear and concise, providing detailed information. And yeah, so they're big assessments, as you can see. But once you break them down, as long as you're using your unit assessment guide, like a Bible, reviewing each point and identifying, okay, well, that needs to go here. So as you can see, under number 1 here, it's actually letting you know, make sure your information is in plain English. Make sure it's easy and able to follow a logical structure. It's an already accessible format, so all that information is on your template and the headings are there ready to go. All we're asking you is to put the name across and put some information under each. Okay, Hayley, do you have any questions at all? Excellent. I'm glad to hear it's all been answered. We definitely will run more sessions every week and they'll be on different topics, but today has been legal, so thank you very much for coming. If you've got no further questions, and I'll be switching off. Thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend.